Greetings, people of the interwebs. I am Zach, and today I'm going to be ranking every single Star Wars film that has ever been made. No, this isn't just limited to the saga. I'm throwing in Rogue One, Solo, and even the Clone Wars movie from back in 2008. So, without further ado, let's dive on in. Number 12, The Last Jedi. If you've been following the channel for a while now, you probably saw this coming. The Last Jedi just simply didn't work for me. Every time I start talking about this movie, it just results in me ranting about why I dislike it. I didn't like how the film presented itself as edgy and how Rian Johnson thought he was doing something so different with Star Wars. And to be honest, when you examine this film, he really didn't. It's just a combination of Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi with subversions sprinkled in here and there. I don't want to spend too much time on this one, but I've always said that I think The Last Jedi is a solid movie until you slap the Star Wars coat of paint on it. In my opinion, it just doesn't work as a Star Wars film because it isn't at all interested with working with any of the films that came before it. Number 11, The Rise of Skywalker. I seriously deliberated between this film and The Last Jedi for the last spot, but decided to go with The Last Jedi. While I struggle to find things I like with The Last Jedi, there are certain parts of The Rise of Skywalker that I enjoyed. For one, I liked how Rey's character was handled more so in this film than any other since the first half of The Force Awakens. She truly struggles with her anger and with who she is in this film, which was compelling at times. However, everything else with this film is a goddamn mess. This isn't my least favorite of the Star Wars films, but it certainly is the most exhausting to watch. Seriously, what is with the pacing of this film? It flies at breakneck speed right out of the gates and hardly ever takes the time to slow down and let you sit with the characters. And to me, that's an integral part of a Star Wars film. In every Star Wars film prior to this, there's a section, usually in the middle, where the plot slows down and the characters really get to digest the problems and struggles that they're facing. Hell, even The Last Jedi does this, but not The Rise of Skywalker. It's just go, 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 go all the way through. I also really don't like the way the film ends. It ends virtually the same way Return of the Jedi ended, except not nearly as satisfying. Number 10, The Clone Wars. Starting off the top 10 is The Clone Wars. Don't really have much to say about this one. It's very bad, but it is interesting to go back and watch it when you know how great the television series will one day become. I guess this one is above The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker because, while it is a terrible film, it just doesn't irritate me like the previous two do. Number 9, Solo. Solo is the most average Star Wars film. It's fine. It didn't really have to exist. No one was really standing on the table for it. But it did get made, and well, it could have been worse. I do enjoy the characters by and large. I think Lando and Beckett, for example, are great. But the story is fairly mediocre and forgettable. The Darth Maul scene at the end was a nice surprise and probably threw many casual fans for a loop. I also doubt we'll see a significant continuation of whatever the ending was setting up with Maul, Kira, and Han. Number 8, The Force Awakens. The Force Awakens is an example of a film that I think has been retroactively tarnished by what comes next. In 2016, if you would have asked me to rank the Star Wars films, this one likely beats out the next two entries on my list. But this is 2020 if you haven't noticed, and we have The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker. The Force Awakens does some awesome things, no doubt. The first half of this film is absolutely outstanding. I love the introductions of Rey and Finn. I love the part Han Solo plays. Harrison Ford seriously did a great job in Solo's swan song. But then the second half hits and this film loses points for me. I don't really like much about it from Takodana on. By this point, it becomes abundantly clear that it's literally just A New Hope with a glossy coat of paint. They redo the cantina scene. They redo the Death Star. They redo the old mentor dying. And then there's the fact that everything this movie sets up gets ignored entirely in The Last Jedi. It murders the rewatchability for me. Number 7, Attack of the Clones. This is the worst of the prequels in my opinion. The dialogue is almost unbearable at times, and I can't stand almost all of the scenes with Anakin and Padme. However, there are some good things in this movie. I like Obi-Wan's investigation of Jango Fett and Kamino. I think the scene in which Anakin's mother dies and he slaughters all the Tusken Raiders is a brilliant stroke of character development. And the arena scene, man. As a kid, I was absolutely dazzled by all the creatures and the hundreds of Jedi that show up. And to this day, it's still so much fun. Number 6, The Phantom Menace. Now we get to the film which I consider to be the most iconic of the prequels. I actually don't think this film is as bad as its reputation. It's not great, but it's still a fun Star Wars movie. I really enjoyed Qui-Gon Jinn and his whole demeanor. I think the pod racing scene still holds up pretty well. Some of the other CGI, not so much. Jar Jar is still Jar Jar, but if you can look past that, The Phantom Menace is a decently good Star Wars film. Number 5, Rogue One. Rogue One is the best of the Disney-era Star Wars films, I think. Though the core cast of characters aren't particularly interesting to me, nor do they really play off each other as well as, say, the Guardians of the Galaxy do, the real draw of this film is in the final 30 minutes. The first 2/3 of it is okay, but the climax of this film puts the war in Star Wars. It's intense, engaging, brutal, and a hell of a lot of fun. The Darth Vader hallway scene is one of my favorite moments in any Star Wars movie. It's just so badass, and I've always wanted to see Vader wipe the floor with some rebel scum. Number 4, Return of the Jedi. The last of the original trilogy comes in at number 4. I think that Return of the Jedi ended the Star Wars saga perfectly. It kills me that this ending is ultimately rendered somewhat hollow as Palpatine just comes back in 30 years before promptly dying again. I try not to think about that, but it does keep me up at night. Anyway, there are a few parts of this film that I'm not crazy about, namely pretty much everything on Endor. I don't like the speeder bike chase with the scout troopers nor the Ewoks. It all feels like filler to me, but the throne room scene with Luke, Vader, and Palpatine is as good as it gets. Peak Star Wars right there. Number 3, Revenge of the Sith. Now we come to the prequel film that I think is the best of the three. Full disclosure, I'm a prequel kid. The movies came out when I was growing up, so I watched them a whole lot. Revenge of the Sith was always my favorite as a kid because it had the most lightsaber battles, and as an adult, it's number 3 on this list because it has the most lightsaber battles. Additionally, I think Revenge of the Sith perfectly sets up the original trilogy and has better dialogue than its 2 predecessors. Mostly. It still has its problems, though. There is a huge portion of the film that's just walking and talking, or sitting and talking, or talking and talking. But other than that, I could watch this film 1,000 times and still not get bored. Number 2, A New Hope. This is where it all began, baby. And what a beginning it was. A New Hope is an absolute classic. It's the perfect display of a hero's journey. There's just so much to love here. So many classic lines, such fantastic music and imagery. We're introduced to some of the most iconic characters in all of film. This is the film that sets up the greatest film franchise in all of cinema. It deserves so much credit for that. Sure, the lightsaber fight between Vader and Obi-Wan looks like 2 old guys tapping sticks, but who doesn't like watching 2 old guys tap sticks? And number 1, The Empire Strikes Back. Was there ever any doubt? The Empire Strikes Back stands as one of the greatest films ever made. It's darker and more introspective than its predecessor, and it truly challenges all of our heroes in the end. They don't win. They leave this film at the lowest point they have ever been, and I love that. The good guys don't always win, and I want to see more films like this. We also get the best Darth Vader out of any of the 3 movies in this one. I love me some Darth Vader, and I also think this film has some of the most impressive visuals in the entire saga as well. Hoth, Dagobah, and the Carbonite Chamber come to mind. After all these years and all these Star Wars films, Empire Strikes Back is still the best in my mind. So that was my list. Let me know your list in the comments below. Do you agree with me? Is your list a little different? Is it the exact opposite? That'd be pretty wild. Anyway, I'm Zach, and I'll see you on the next one.